sons and daughters here in this place. I am surrounded by the arms of the Father. I am surrounded by songs, deliverance. We've been liberated. Oh, He set us free from our bondage. We're the sons and the daughters. Here we are. Let us sing our freedom. Oh, 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 we sing. Oh, we've been free. If you have been free, then worship His name, because He is here in this place and He is moving like never before. The Lord is here. Oh, 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 You split the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears are drowned in perfect love. You rescued me so I can stand and say, a child of God. Holy heart, you split the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears are drowned in perfect love. You rescued me so I can stand and say, a child of God. A child of God. I am 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 a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. Oh, we thank you for this opportunity, Lord. Give us this chance to be here in your presence. And just how you are, we're going to end our praise and worship. And I'm going to ask you to take a seat. These next minutes that I have with you, I wanted to share with you today the importance of what we just sang. It is so nice to say that God has liberated us. And I know if you're here in this place, some way, in some matter, God has changed your life. In some way, in a situation, there has been a point where you have encountered yourself with God. And I don't know if you remember how you were before you found God. And it doesn't have to be to the point where you consider yourself as religious or anything like that. But there is a point in each and every of our lives where we had a life and we didn't know anything about God. And if we know about God now, it's because somebody told us about God. It's because we may have heard it from somewhere. But isn't it crazy how we wouldn't be here today if it weren't for God? You may think, well, I mean, it's true. God, you know, it doesn't true. Some people say, no, it's not true because the life that I have is my life. The life that I'm living, I decide whether I go to church. I decide whether I seek of him. And as we all know, the life that we have is the life that God has given us. And I think more than anything, where would we be? Just how we sang the song, we are the children of God. I am a child of God. How many children of God are here today? We are all his children, and we are all his children. Maybe you say, well, I don't consider myself his child because I don't come to church regularly. I don't seek him. I don't read his word daily like I'm supposed to. I don't thank him every day for giving me another gift of life, another day of opportunity. Even though you may say, I'm not that religious, because people think we're religious. People think we're crazy about Jesus. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm crazy about my God. But if we're crazy about our God, it's because we know, we've seen firsthand how he has worked, how he moves, how he heals, how he consoles us. Whenever we go through a situation, I think I said this the last time I preached, we always try to figure everything ourselves. We always try to do everything ourselves. But when we admit that we need help, when we put God first, like right now, when you're, I don't know what point you are in your life, but when you make that decision that, you know what, things are tough, things are not how I wanted, the outcome is not what I expected, but when you accept the fact that this is how things are, and you let God make room, you let him work, then you're gonna see a different outcome. It may be an outcome that it's gonna surprise you. That's why I always say, don't let your physical eyes deceive you. Because you are seeing one thing, but you know what? God is seeing something else completely. And I'm so glad that you're here today. And I kind of just wanted to take a brief moment and talk about how important it is, you know, coming to these services. And it's not just the English service, it's regarding any service. It's regarding the services that this church has overall. It's safe to say that I have seen how God has worked in this place, and it is just beyond incredible. But let's be honest, how the church is functioning, all the people that are coming. I know some of you guys can recall, it wasn't always like that. I think some of you guys can recall, we kind of had our dark moment here in this church. And it blows my mind how we have those people that kind of pay attention to see who's been coming to church. And I remember people used to be like that over the services on Wednesdays. They're like, man, no one's even here. Why do I come? I remember it'd be 7 o'clock. And I'd just be looking at Pastor like, so there would be literally one person like sitting up here, like a couple. And I'm like, so can we start? And Pastor's like, no, we gotta give it time. And I was like, it's like, but we're supposed to start on time. But I understood what he meant. And I've been coming to these Wednesday services as much as I can. And let me tell you, it's just, when you look at it now compared to how it started, it's crazy. There's a good amount of people in those Wednesday services. It really blows my mind because we come here to this place with a perspective thinking, oh, this is as good as it's gonna get. I used to be one of those people too, don't get me wrong. This is as good as it's gonna get, this is the way things are. But it's so crazy how in the blink of an eye, before you know it, here are all these changes. Before you know it, here are these people willing to help, stepping in. Here are all these people coming to the services, and it blows my mind. And God, I can say, God has been good to us. And I know that he's gonna continue to be good. And maybe our process, because I know we're all going through a process right now, maybe our process is a little slow. Maybe we're not seeing the results that we want to see. But let me tell you, in a way, I feel like it's working. God is always here in this place. And a little something that I kind of wanted to share with you today about the importance on how it is when you give a testimony. When you hear testimonies, I think some of us have heard our fair share of testimonies. And when you hear somebody come up here and they say about what God has done for them, you know, sometimes, well, let's face it, sometimes we don't always pay attention to whoever shares their testimony. Why? Because we come here late, we're thinking about other things, but testimonies are such a big deal. Why? Because if it weren't for that, we wouldn't be here in this place. If it weren't about God reaching out to us, who knows where we would be? And let's face it, just because we don't have God in our lives doesn't mean we can't even guarantee that we would be alive today. Who knows how many car accidents God has protected us from coming here. I hear sometimes people are literally on their way to church and they get in a car accident. It's like not even coming here is guaranteed. Doesn't that blow your mind? Like you're going to the house of the Lord, you would think, but it happens. Even coming here is not a guarantee. Who knows what other things God had protected us, and we never know. I can guarantee you there's a list on each and every person. Everything God has prevented from happening to you. I mean, he can't prevent everything, because sometimes, yes, we have to go through trials. We have to go through tribulations, because when we go through those things, it tests our faith. And when we overcome those things, of course, our faith goes even more and more, and then we become better Christians, because every time we go through something and we're able to see the light at the end of that tunnel, like they say, you can say, wow, God is really that great. And I was telling, I remember I was telling my dad at one point, my dad, not the pastor, my dad, you know, I would like to see the God that you have come to know. Because it's not the same coming to church and learning about a God that's mighty and powerful. I mean, that's great, but it's not the same thing as you witnessing it for yourself. When God does that for you, it's a game changer. And once he does it with you, you will never see him the same way again. And once he does it, don't think that he's going to do it for you and that's it. He's going to forget about you. He's going to move on to if he did it that one time, he can do it again and again and again. That it is up to us to be so persistent in seeking his presence. And testimonies are something that are very powerful, that I think is sometimes we have stories and we kind of just say them and we don't realize as we're saying that story, like, now that I think of it, oh my gosh, I really got lucky. Like, I could have died. Like, it makes a difference. If you're here in this place, if you still have life, it's because God wanted you to be here. It's because you have purpose. Some people say, oh, if I would have died, it wouldn't have mattered because nobody would have noticed. No. If God gave you life, if you're put in this earth, it's because you have purpose. And we're so careless sometimes. We don't even think about, when you think back, like maybe when you were kids, you think back and you're like, man, if you really think about it, man, how many times could I have died? Like, don't you know kids that, for example, have you never met a kid that has put pennies in the little holes where you're supposed to connect the television and things like that? Like, do you know how many kids do that? It's very common, believe it or not. I remember one of my little sisters, when we were little, we were at the house. We were on the we were all on the phone, we were on the computer watching TV, and I don't know where you hear like the electricity buzzing, psh, psh, and we're like, what? Everything shut down. And then we found out somebody had put a penny in there, and for the life of me, I can't remember who it was, because I have two little sisters. So somebody put a penny in there, and you saw the little plug, it was all black and burnt, like, I mean, we're all laughing, giggling, like, but I mean, somebody could have died. Now when you think about it, sometimes we have stories that if you think back, it's like, man, you're very fortunate to be here. Because with you, it might have been an accident or just like, oh, caution. But other people, they die every day. They die in many different ways. They die in ways that they don't even expect to die. A lot of the common ones, they get into car accidents, reckless driving, things like that. It's real. It's serious. You can walk, you can even, anything could happen. That's the thing about life. It's crazy, it's unexpected. And I think that's why when it comes to testimonies, I think it's something very powerful. Kind of makes a statement. Like, man, God is real. Like I said before, if you're here, if you have life today, it's because he wants you here. He needs you here. Why? That's for him to tell you, because I don't know everybody's purpose. And some of us are still trying to figure out, what is our purpose? What is our purpose in this life? Along the road, you're going to discover things that you're going to like to do. You're going to discover things that you want to do for the church. And when you start doing one thing, let me tell you, it's going to lead you to other things. You may not see it now, but once you start serving in the house of the Lord, it may take some time, but God just takes you from one place to another. And before you know it, you're going to be growing and knowing about him more and more and more. And that's how your relationship with him is also going to grow. And I think some of the examples, you don't have to pull it up, but one of the things that in the Bible, for example, that they can be considered as testimonies, maybe people didn't share them as testimonies, but it's things that Jesus did. For example, if you go to the book of Matthew in chapter 15, through verses 32 to 39, it kind of talks about how Jesus multiplied the fish and the bread. Imagine all those people who were hungry and who didn't think they were going to get to eat because they were poor. There's people like that out there today. Like, who knows if they're going to eat today? Those people didn't think they were going to eat. He only had a little bit of fish, a little bit of bread, and then he multiplied it. And all those 4,000 people, they were able to eat. And I heard there was leftovers too. Like, isn't that insane? You would think whoever was there that day, they would be saying, like, I really didn't think I was going to live another day. I really didn't think I was going to eat. It's just miraculous. And that's something a little simple. But how about if we move to this other story that you can find in the book of Mark, chapter 5. You can read the verses 21 and 43, and I'm just saying them out there because I'm going to get to my point in a little bit. In the book of Mark, it talks about a father, and I'm not going to lie, I forgot his name, but he had a daughter who was dead. And he came up to Jesus and said, is there anything that you can do for her, even though she was dead? Fast forwarding, Jesus brought her back from the dead. You would think that little girl now, back then, or if she was now, if somebody was brought back from the dead, you would think they would use that as a testimony. It's so powerful. Why? Because everybody who dies, they just can't come back whenever they want. I'm sure there's people out there in the world who have a testimony like that. They died, and then somehow they come back. Testimonies are stories that show you that God is true. And the funny thing, I actually Googled what testimony means. If you put it in Google, just the word testimony, it gives you the formal, definition. So here, if you just put testimony in Google, it says, a formal written or spoken statement, especially given one in the court of law. So it's like, that's not the testimony I was talking about. But then, if you put what does a testimony mean in a biblical sense, it gives you this other whole different definition. And it says, a testimony is the spirit of prophecy, as seen in the book of Revelations 19:10. It's a personal revelation from God. You know, it says, revealing the truthness of the gospel of Jesus Christ. It makes a deep and lasting impression on the soul. And when people come and say their testimonies, you know, they come just as surprised as you get when you hear the story. Because they never think that it could happen to them. And sometimes, us as believers, we kind of get tired of waiting on God. Haven't we heard, everything in God's time? And at the beginning, when we're praying about something, we're like, yeah, everything's in God's time. But then as time goes by, more time goes by, those minutes become hours, those hours become days, those days become weeks, those weeks become months, months become years. We get tired, we get overwhelmed. Sometimes we get stuck in a routine. I've talked about that with you guys too. And we come to a point where it's like, you know, I do believe in God, but we always like to put that but I don't know. I haven't really seen him much lately. I haven't seen a difference. That's why we have to be faithful in him. When you hear other people's testimonies, they share it because it inspires others to not stop believing. It inspires others to not stop hoping. When you come up here and you open your mouth, you have no idea how many people you're impacting. You have no idea who's going through a situation where they're literally clinging on to faith. It's like they're clinging on this rope, and this rope is slowly breaking. It's slowly like, oh, this is it. It's about to rip. I'm about to fall. Many of us get like that from time to time. But I love the fact when I hear other people's testimonies, because it'll be from people where they've been coming to church. But every once in a while, let's face it, we get tired. I've spoken to you about that before. Oh, how tired we get. I don't know what tired you are. Testimonies are something that I think are a big deal as part of a Christian life. And sometimes some of us have these stories where, like me, for example, you know, I found Jesus Christ, you know, when I was a teenager, but just because I found him doesn't mean that things were great after that. Of course, I was a teenager, and you know, sometimes if you were a teenager once, you know that sometimes things, you know, well, I don't know about you guys. Maybe you guys were so well behaved compared to me. I was a brat. You can ask my dad. Oh, I was something, all right. So my life with Jesus Christ wasn't easy. I was those people who was like, I like going to church, I like singing, but you know, being here full time, it's not for me. I don't want to be like that. Oh my gosh. I used to be so annoyed when my dad was here all the time. And I never understood why he was here all the time. I was like, why don't you ever go to my boring choir concerts? He was always at church, always, always, always. And there came a point where even I got mad at God, because it was like, man, it's not fair. It's always this. It's always something at church. It's always something at church. I'm always at church. And I look at me now. I'm always at church. And I find it funny because I was one of those people that even said, I don't think I'm ever going to be preaching, because then that means I have to do it. If you do it once, someone's going to ask you to do it again. Like, don't think they're not. I was like that. And now look at me, here I am. How many Sundays have I been here already? Oh, Lord. We somehow forget that the life that we have, God gave us this life. We always make these choices saying, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, I don't want to. But life is so funny, because when you learn the more that you seek God, the more you seek of him, and let me tell you, as of right now, My life with Jesus Christ is in a level that I never thought it would be at, but I still have a lot of work to do. I'm the kind of person that believes it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter what stage in your life that you're living right now, even if you're single, if you're married, if you have kids. I truly believe that there is always something that you can learn. There is always something that you can learn, and I feel I have a very open mind to that, because until the very last day that I take breath, I know there's always going to be something that I'm going to be learning, and it's going to be regarding my personal life, or it's going to be regarding God. Because let's face it, there is no person that can come up to this stage and say, I know every single little thing about the Bible. I know every single little detail about Jesus. It's not going to happen. But testimonies, they're essential, because when you share your story, you have no idea who else you're impacting. Because you see, when we come up here, or just in general, when you come to church, any regular person comes to church, people are already assuming that you are a type of way. But what people don't realize is that this church, when you go to church, it's for the broken. It's for us to come renew our strengths. It's for us to come say thanks. Thank you, God, because despite of it all, I can come and say that you've been good. Or God, I have had a crappy day. It wasn't that great. Please just, you can kneel down before him. You can lift up your hands. But there's actually a testimony that I wanted you guys to hear. But guess what? It's not for me. I feel with my walking in God, I'm not going to lie, I don't think I have a good story. But I feel like it's coming, because at one point in our life, let's face it, we're all going to go through something. We're all going to go through a trial that's going to test you to see. Let's see, you say you believe in me. You say you have put all your faith in me. Let's see, prove it. Just like in the book of Job. He's like, prove it. So, in these last minutes that we have here, we have about 30 minutes left, but probably those 15, I'm going to invite my very special guest. He is going to go ahead, and I asked him to tell us a little something. So I'm going to ask him to come up here. And these last minutes that we have, I'm trying to find a stand. Do you want to stand down there? That's okay. I'm going to ask my good friend John to come up here. And I think he's going to close out this service for us.
All right. I'm kind of sick, so I can't sing. That's my reason. So yeah, I was asked by Leslie to share my testimony. So it's gonna take about an hour. Oh, I'm just kidding. Not definitely not long. I don't know how many of y'all know me, but I think even if you do know me, you probably don't know about this story because I don't really talk about it much. I was kind of young when it happened, so I've forgotten like a lot of what happened. I was about like 7 years old, right? So tell me if you remember what you did when you were 7, because I don't really know. So I wasn't really aware of like the severity of the situation, I guess. So when Leslie asked me to share this testimony, kind of had to remember and ask my family about what happened, right? Because I don't really remember too much. And then I did my research in Google and stuff. So yeah, it was kind of bad looking back at it. And I was very fortunate, to be standing here because of God, of course. So quick background, I guess. I got this disease called dengue. It's pronounced D-E-N-G-E. And it affects a lot of people like in the tropics. So the Philippines is like always rainy and there's a lot of mosquitoes there and stuff. So it's kind of like similar to like the West Nile virus, yellow fever, and stuff like that. And it's contracted by mosquitoes, right? So, and it affects a lot of poorer countries because, like, it wouldn't be too bad if it was like in America, right? We'll probably find a vaccine in like a few years or something. But in the Philippines, most people don't have money, so there's not a lot of funding for this disease. Anyway, so what happened was, this was like right before Christmas or something, like maybe a few weeks before Christmas. I was 7. I was at the mall, having fun as a kid, running around. I remember this, I don't know why, but I remember this exactly. I was in the toy section or something, and I was just picking out the toys that I wanted my mom to buy me, or actually Santa, because I still believe in Santa for some reason back then. So when I got home, and I was going to sleep, I felt like really cold, like when you're about to get a fever, you feel like those chills. And this is the Philippines. It's never cold, especially where I live. I don't even have AC, so it was kind of weird that I was like shivering, right? So basically throughout the night I was just shivering the whole time, and I could not sleep. And then like towards the morning, my mom found me, and I was like sweating like crazy, and so I was sick. And she took me immediately to the hospital because she knew about the epidemic that was going on at the time, and she was scared that I had dengue. And she was right, of course. So I was in the hospital, and I was a kid, so I had no idea what was going on, right? I remember seeing in the news a lot of kids laying in like beds, and they were reporting how a lot of them, were dying, and it was because they weren't getting enough treatment and stuff like that. Because like I said, they were like poor, right? They weren't even able to go to the hospital. Unfortunately, I was in the hospital, but that's all I knew about it. I didn't really know how serious it was. And my brother, who's like a year older than me, he had the same thing, but his wasn't too bad because like the very next day he was like fine, like he was chill, like he recovered very quickly. He was like over there eating food, while I'm over here, like the doctor said I'm not allowed really to eat anything. So apparently it's only supposed to last like 7 days or something, or like 10 days, but I was there for like a long time. It was weeks apparently. My fever got bad, and it got like really bad, like it was like super high, and it would not go down. And as you know, if you have a high fever and if your fever doesn't go down, you can get brain damage and you can end up dying that way. So that was the biggest concern. And they had to put me to the ICU, the intensive care unit. And that part was scary. I remember coming in there because I was alone, because in the usual place, like, you had family around you and stuff, but in the ICU, they weren't really letting anyone in there. Only the doctors were there. And I remember, I was like kind of in and out, because when you have that high fever, you don't really remember much and you're sleeping most of the time. And I was just actually talking to my brother like a couple hours ago. Literally, he randomly called me, and I asked him, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that one time we're in the hospital and it was kind of bad. And he was like, kind of bad? You almost died. I was like, well, I didn't think it was that bad, but then he told me like how bad it actually was, because he was feeling better, so he remembered everything that happened. And apparently when I was in the ICU, I was like knocked out. I was almost in a coma basically for like a few weeks. And they didn't know if I was gonna make it. Doctor said, I had like basically a 50% chance to live. They've done everything that they could, right? It's basically like out of the hands now, whether I get better or not. And of course, by the grace of God, he was able to save me. Um, and I remember my brother was telling me how I woke up the first time, and I was asking him like, "Hey, what's going on? Why is everyone like around me? Like they were like, you know, acting like very happy to see me awake because I had no idea." Um, he told me I was been out for like a few weeks, and to me it just only felt like a day. So to me I wasn't like, oh, I wasn't really worried about it. But yeah, basically I was kind of sleeping the whole time, but it was talking to my brother, and he really told me about how bad it could have been. And looking back at it now, like Leslie said, sometimes we take things for granted. Sometimes we don't like really remember like all the great things God has done for us. And that was one of those things that when I look back at it, it really is kind of amazing that I'm standing here in front of y'all. But the plus side of almost dying is that during that Christmas year, I got a whole bunch of toys, right? Like my family's poor, so I never get nothing. And I literally asked for everything, like anything. I was like, man, they were like, give me the list. I wrote a big old list. First time in my life, I got everything on that list. My brother was so jealous. He was like, man, I should have stayed. He's like, why can't I almost die? I'm like, you know what you're talking about. Anyway, I got it like, whew, it was a good Christmas. Anyway, so that was the best part of that story, other than, of course, being saved by God and living. So yeah, that's my story. Like I said, just don't take things for granted, and always thank God for every day that He gives us, because there was a very good chance that I could not have woken up from, that sickness. So, yeah, I'm done.
Wow, and we thank you for sharing that with us. If you don't know, John is my husband, and he was one of those people. I'm gonna put him on the spotlight, sorry. He was also one of those people that said, oh, you're never gonna see me going to pick up the offering. Oh, you're never gonna see me going up there. And look where he is now, Isn't it beyond crazy how God works? And when he told me that story, he told to me like nothing. I was like, what do you mean you almost died? It's a big deal. Some of the stuff that we go through, or some of the stuff that we don't even know that we're going through, or we may have gone through. But John, thank you for sharing that with us. And if you were here today to listen to that, you are very fortunate, because he doesn't lie when he says he doesn't really talk. It is something that now you guys know. Only you know about that. So we thank him for his life, and I'm going to ask you to stand. We're going to conclude the preaching part, and I just want you to just reflect on everything that God has done for your life. Maybe things are going actually well, which is great, because yes, even though we're Christian, even though we go to church, we can have good days too. We are allowed to have great, exceptional, fantastic days, and there is nothing wrong with that. But there's also going to be some of us that while we have our great days, somebody else is not going to be having a great day. But I just hope you reflect on the importance of how so important it is that the fact that we know God, and it would be different if we didn't know him. It would be different if we still had no idea about Jesus Christ. So I just invite you, more than anything, I encourage you to keep on going. Maybe there's something that he has told you. Maybe there's something that has promised you. But I just want to tell you, and I want to reassure you more than anything, God doesn't forget about his children. He doesn't forget about us coming to his church every Sunday at the 2:00 service. He knows the efforts. He knows of our heart's desires. He knows it all. But it's all going to be in his perfect time. And in these last seconds that we have, I just want to thank you, God, for giving us a chance to be here in your house. One more Sunday. Here we are finishing off, saying and telling you how great you are. You are so great. Thank you for saving us. Thank you for liberating us from the life that we had before. Who knows where we would have been if it weren't for you? We may not even be here alive today if it weren't for your grace, for your love, for your mercy. Help us learn more about you every day. Help us try to seek you more daily. And thank you, God. Thank you for everything that you have done, everything that you're doing, and everything that's yet to come. Amen. And with that being said,